up, everyone? Hope you all have enjoyed the Ross Barnett deal. Now we get into really the nuts and bolts of the whole deal. This is where it all comes together. I try to lay out everything that I pretty much learned and try to give you a better recap. You know, a lot of people do recaps of stuff. I'm not going to do a recap of how I caught my fish or things like that. I really go into like the recap, what I call how I put everything together, because really that's what it is. Like I'll show you all how I caught fish. I'll show you the setups and things like that as well. But really it's what went on in my head and what I learned, what I didn't learn, or I learned too late, things like that. Little stuff. It's the little stuff really that I think is the difference between someone catching 12 pounds and 14 pounds, or only catching 4, or just all that little stuff. How can you just maximize everything? Because you can't go win every tournament, right? But you can do so much better in every tournament. All of us can. So let's kind of jump on in. If you're new to this is called the Juice Series. Go look them up. This is what I do after every single big event like this. This is where all the pieces come together. This is one of the tournaments I really wish I could have fished on day 3, because I think I would have done good. And I'll even go into that, like what really goes on. And what I mean by that is, like, sometimes you can get some help, and I think I would have gotten some. And so, like I said, all the stuff I learned. Let's jump on in. All right, let's get over here to Ross Barnett. You can see which one it is because all the trails are still there. Change my map source, Contour XD, and that's a big deal. I didn't have a really good map for this. I just didn't get one. So here's Ross Barnett, okay? Why I want to show you the whole lake is important to me, because this is part of it. It's trying to figure out where to go, right? You've got 3, maybe 4 days. You know, that's if everything goes right. You know, we had some weather in here going on, and so that cut me short a half a day. In the opens, you don't get to fish but till 12 o'clock on Wednesday. So that cuts you off a half day. So you got to maximize your fishing time. So I've only been here once, and I remembered where I fished. I remembered fishing up north in practice for that event and did horrible. So I don't know, I just didn't want to go fish up north. I really didn't want to go fish back where I caught them. I think that's pretty much where it got won, but I think I had a chance to win where I was at. I'll be honest, and I'll go into that. So this is what happened. You can tell I didn't fish anything up here. I stayed down here, and I went basically in that arm and a little over here. I went over here on day 1 of practice. The reason I did that is I was driving from Texoma from an event, a TXTT. So by the time I got over there, I only had a half day. I wasn't going to go far. That's where I went. It actually, one little place saved me. It definitely saved me on day 1. And even I caught a fish there on day 2. So I did learn something. That was what was key, though. It was funny. This is what if you heard me say this in I think it was my practice video. I drove out of that main boat ramp where we took out of, and I'm driving, and I know just from that creek and just how this lake sets up, and I'll show you. If you see how this lake sets up, there's almost nothing over here. Okay, on this side of the lake. And on this side, I know this map doesn't show it great, but see all these islands? All these islands. And all these little indentions. And then obviously, this big creek. And that's where they live, right? There's not much on that other side. So it doesn't get as much pressure. There's a reason it doesn't get as much pressure. There's not as many fish either. Island out of that marina, it's the weekend, right? And I'm like, I'm island, and everything told me to go that other side. And I'm like, at the last second, I'm like, no, let's just go over here. Got a half day, who cares? And I didn't try to dissect it any. I just said, I'm just going over here, and I'm just gonna start. And I'm just gonna start going through everything. And when I mean by dissect, I wasn't gonna sit there and try to look at the map and figure out where I needed to go. I'm just gonna go to the first place that looks good. I can remember so many tour events where we'd get to lakes. I didn't know where to go. We just put in the boat ramp, and everyone wants to take off running. Every once in a while I did that. A lot of times we just literally at the boat ramp we put in at and went and started fishing. And you start figuring out things really, really quick. And that's what I did here. And I had a pretty decent, I didn't get any big ones really, but I had a pretty decent little half day. I kind of figured out what to go do. So the next day when I went fishing, I was ready. The next day is where I spent all here, okay? And I basically went underneath the bridge, which is right there. And I didn't go over here. I went in here. I went in those things. I was looking for a shad spawn. So I wasn't gonna go fish the bridge or the rocks and all that stuff that was on the main lake. I saw everyone doing that, and I just didn't want to do it. So I went back in the creek, and I looked over there to my right, and I'm like, oh, I see some rocks over there. There's got to be a shad spawn going on. Well, there wasn't. But once again, I was pretty calm. I made a video a while back ago. Maybe I'll put it up there. It was about getting in a rut and fishing. When I had made that video, I'd been mainly on Rayburn. We hadn't really gone anywhere. Next week, I don't think I've missed a check from the time I made that video. So I think I've made like 9 checks in a row or something like that. I'm not sure. So I'm feeling pretty confident and relaxed. Man, I'll figure them out. I'm not in any rush. It lets you calm down. I look around, I'm like, that really doesn't look good. And a lot of times when stuff doesn't look good, you don't want to fish it. Like, I'm guilty of that. Of like, it doesn't look good, just fish it all. That's usually when you learn stuff, because everyone's gonna fish the good looking stuff. So I fished the bad stuff and started getting bit. And I mean, if you see in that practice video, man, I was jacked up, because man, these were some big ones. At about 9 o'clock, I ran into 2 problems. One was they stopped biting, or I stopped getting bit. I don't know which one it was. The reason it was a big deal was I couldn't figure it out if it was a morning deal or is where I was at. And I come to find out, I'm pretty sure it was where I was at. The morning deal obviously had a big play in it, but I didn't know that at the time. So eventually I had to go fish all this other water and not get bit to figure that out. And then I had to go redo it again at the right time. So I had to go start back in there in the morning time and see if it was where I was at or the morning time as well. And so, you know, it was one of those deals that I had to go figure that out as well. But it was worth figuring out. As it kept going on, I think maybe later on that day, I got out there in that gator grass. And that gator grass was the key. The gator grass was really where to go win this event. This is the hardest thing about this event, was the gator grass and what I was doing. And I don't show it a lot because it really didn't come into play that much, although it should have. And I'll go into that. I start throwing that swim jig around that gator grass. And I'd gotten a bite here and there, other than when I was throwing the frog, and I started getting bit. That bite was way better. And I've had some guys kind of like badmouth Ross Barnett. In practice, it was stupid. I mean, I was getting 30, 40 bites a day. I could have gotten way more, but I mean, I was getting 4, 5, 6 bites, shaking them off, and then going somewhere else. And so there was a fairly big section where it was great. I thought I had it all dialed in. Pressure was going to get to it in my head. That's what was going to happen. That the pressure was going to get to the swim jig bite and the gator grass. And I saw some guys all flipping the reeds. And if you notice later on, I only went and flipped reeds. I didn't want to do it because I see everyone doing it. So I'm like, okay, if everyone's flipping, I can swim jig. I eventually go and flip and catch that 6-pounder in my back pocket. I've seen all the reeds. I know where they're already all are at, so I don't have to go fish them. I already knew the depth of the water. I knew everything about the flip and the reeds deal. So if I wanted to go do it, I would go do it. But that to me is going to get way more pressure than what I was doing. I was really excited about the frog deal, right? Because the frog bites were big ones, and I didn't think anyone was doing it where I was at, right? I knew there'd be some people doing it, but I thought they'd do it more around places that looked more froggy. And that wasn't. And I say that, and I'm being serious. Like, a lot of times I throw a frog where people don't throw a frog. Eventually went outside of the bridge and found some places. I really tried to make this boat dock deal happen with the frog. I found out later that they really don't get on boat docks that great. I'm not saying they don't. Like, when I say that, guys, listen to me. I never say that they don't get on boat docks. Of course they get on boat docks. What I'm saying is, it's not like some big awesome boat dock thing. Or at least it wasn't in this tournament, because I can tell you I saw almost no one fishing them. I understood why, because they were in that. But when I did get a bite on one, it was a big one. But I mean, God, it was few and far between. All those boat docks, and I didn't figure this out until the tournament. You had to go get in the shallowest water you could, and then find that boat dock that's right there. Like one of the first couple ones next to the shallowest, nastiest looking, horrible looking flat water. All the 2 to 4 foot boat docks, horrible, horrible. So they usually, so you had to find a boat dock way in the back of somewhere, right? The last boat dock or two, to where it flattened out and was the shallowest one. That's where the fish were at, or that's the place you could catch one on a boat dock. So now you're limited, because most of the boat docks over there obviously are going to be more, when I say dug out, they're going to be in places where you can get a boat, right? And even if it's low, like by a foot. So they're not going to put a lot of boat docks in 1 foot to 2 foot of water. They're going to put them in 2 to 4. So, you know, it kind of limits you. The gator grass, it really didn't matter. Obviously, it's better next to a ditch. When I say a ditch, we're talking 2 to 3 foot ditch, 4 foot at the most. I mean, it's shallow everywhere around there. And I could catch them in the middle, right? If something was in the middle of that ditch or drain or whatever, I mean, if there was one little piece of gator grass, right? Or even a stick, man, there's a fish on it. And you could swim that swim jig by it. You could do it along bulkheads. You could do it along almost anything. It really didn't matter, but gator grass was better and was more consistent. Majority of my bites while I was there was the gator grass swim jig deal. And it doesn't show me in the tournament doing it that much. And here's why. But you saw I started off day one jacked up. I didn't have some great place to go do it, but it didn't matter. I was going to get to do it, and I thought I could go catch a limit within the first 10 minutes. I really thought it was that good. Yes, it was really good in practice, guys. It was fun in practice. If you consider shaking fish off all day long fun, that's like the anticipation of what's about to happen, right? A couple things. There was a storm that came through in practice. My buddies were like, man, are you worried about the rain? I'm like, no, because it's been raining up here. So if anything's dirty, it's already dirty. I'm not going to have any flow like they will up the river. So I'm not worried about that. Or current, I was a little worried about that front, because it said they were going to get some colder nights. The nights didn't really get that cold. And it didn't change any of the bite from what I could see. It's the frog bite, them coming up to get something usually is what it causes. I didn't see anything like that. I know they didn't bite on day one like I wanted them to, where I started and stuff, like on a frog when I was frogging, but they bit later on. So I know that had nothing to do with it. What it was the water falling. It was falling every day. When you're throwing that deep, right, it matters. And I'm exaggerating, right? Going shallow, like they are dirt. But here's when I knew it was a problem. If someone even mentioned on my comments, like, man, you had your trolling motor really high. Yeah, because I mean, one, I didn't want to hit stumps, because I mean, you can't see them. But two, we were fishing that shallow. Well, everything was going good. Like, I wasn't hitting bottom very much with my trolling motor or anything. And it was jacked up all the way. I put that on day one of when I went in right off the bat, and maybe the music was too loud, but I hit the stump with my trolling motor, just barely, rocked it a little bit. I haven't really had that happen in 4 days. And all of a sudden, as I get up in there, I'm looking back and I'm kicking up mud with my trolling motor already, and it's all the way up. And those first couple bites missed it, and they were little. All the good looking stuff that was further out. I mean, I was the first one through it, guys. That was a big deal to me. I should have got bit on all that stuff, and I didn't get bit on any of it. Like, I'm sitting here going, what? It's happening. I told my buddy Blake, it always changes. Something always changes. I'm talking about like the best pattern you ever have, it'll change on you. And I can't always explain why, in the sense of it's gonna happen. It's fishing. It's just, and it's these opens and it's pressure, or it's whatever. In my head, I'm like, yeah, but what's gonna change these fish? Pressure probably is the only thing that's gonna change them. So I'll adapt to that as the tournament goes on. Well, I knew it wasn't pressure because I was the first one through it. And then where I started to finally get some bites wasn't good. And then when I went frog fishing, it didn't bother them here, but it most certainly did. For whatever reason, it did. So the water dropping was our biggest Achilles heel, for sure. Long story short, day one really, I can't even be mad about day one. I had 1 over 4 and 1 over 5 hit. I caught a 4-pounder. I had 11 pounds. I probably should have weighed in 17. I probably should have been in top 5 after day 1. With my 12 pounds on the next day, I should have probably been sitting 3rd or 4th with a small chance to maybe contend. Hallman didn't catch him on day 1. He only caught 4. I think he might have lost some, I'm not sure. But on day 2, we talked to each other on the ride home. And this is, I know this isn't how my normal juice videos are, but this is a pretty big deal. I'll tell you a little story about him. He catches 17 pounds. He catches the biggest bag on day 2. I said, hey man, so what happened? He's like, I just went fishing again. Well, we're in the same creek. We saw each other all at practice. We had the same game plan, and it was funny. We didn't know it until about 2 days within practice. I'm like, what are you still doing here? He's like, I ain't leaving nowhere. I'm like, yeah, me neither. We can do everything we want to do in here, and when things change, we can adjust because we have different types of water in here to adjust to. So I said, well, what happened? He goes, man, I just started flipping that gator grass. And I'm like, yeah, but like, I thought it was too low. And he was like, I know, so did I, because we saw each other all on day 1 and fished all the same area and didn't catch them. He's like, man, I just went further back, and he goes, I got into one little section and got a bite, and then got another bite. And he said, next thing you know, he catches a 7-pounder and some other ones, and I think he lost a 5 and missed him. He said he looked up and he saw Nick LeBron, who ended up coming in second, coming through there, throwing a swim jig as fast as he possibly could. And he told me, he's like, he looked at his calling there, he's like, Todd's gonna smash him today. And he knew that because he didn't even know I'd really been throwing a swim jig. Like, we never really talked about it, but that's what I had been doing. And so Hallman eventually had to pick one up too, because he wasn't covering enough ground, and Nick was about to come through there and just come through everything, like, really quick. It's just a little strategy. I would have done the same thing if I'd, like, you can slow down when no one's around, but you kind of have to fish fast if other guys are fishing fast. Like, they're going to come through your area and then go through the next area and stuff like that. So Hallman picked one up, caught some fish on it, and he's like, oh man, we missed it. Or he thought he missed it. He told me where he was at. If you look on my map, on my creek, I fished about everything in there, to where I wasn't going to just continuously keep getting bites and shaking them off. I don't do that. It was kind of like my reed deal. I saw the reeds. I saw me catch a 6-pounder, and I'm like, I know where all the reeds are at. If that's the deal, I'll just run that the rest of the day. Well, I started looking around, and I idled all that stuff. I knew where all the gator grass was. I knew where it all was. And if I just kept on getting bit, I would have fished all of it throughout the entire event and never stopped. The problem was, I fished a whole bunch of it and never had a bite, basically. And I thought that water coming down had moved them all for whatever reason. And I talked to Hallman about this. He goes, I have no idea why either. One little section, they didn't leave. One little place, they didn't leave. And I was going, that's, I consider sometimes bad luck is just bad luck. And I had I had a really good event. I was pleased with my event, but I had 2 little things of bad luck. Losing those fish wasn't even one of the bad lucks. That's just part of fishing. I can deal with that. But that bad luck of that one little section of gator grass, not really, them fish not leaving, I mean, that's almost impossible, because we're talking about a whole bunch of gator grass on this thing. Ask anyone. Like, it's a bunch. So it's not something you can just go all run even in a day. Like, it's going to take you multiple days to hit it all, which was perfect for me. But that was a little bit of bad luck. And then on day two, that pepper grass of me leaving it just for like 5 minutes to let him calm down, and literally I'd fished that thing around there for pretty much a long practice. Everything. I never saw anyone over there, and for a guy to kind of come through, and he really, I'll be honest, he wasn't trying. I was watching him. As I was coming up in there, he was throwing the other way. He was throwing out there on stumps and like in the pads. He was not even facing the pepper grass. And if you watch in that video, you'll see him barely put the power poles down. They're almost out of it, and his going there is bombing out there. and catches them. And like I said, he didn't catch any. The co-angler caught them all. And I mean, he was basically one cast away from not getting those bites. And then I would have maybe had a chance to, I didn't get a chance to fish it for the rest of the day, or like come back. You know, I think I could have come back every couple hours, like every 2 hours, and maybe caught one, right? Every time we drove by through there, they were sitting on it. And I mean, we're talking about a place that you can't even move from. So it wasn't like you're gonna win the tournament there. It was just a place to catch a fish and maybe cull up. And that was just some bad luck. I just happened to time that at the worst possible time to leave for 5 minutes to let him rest because I was in a bad spot. I think all these are important in this juice video. I'm not just telling you that, like, there's things sometimes that yeah, looking back, I should have never left. Nothing showed me that me leaving would be a problem, right? Looking back, I probably won't do that again, I guess. But I could probably do that 100 more times and that will never happen again. Never saw anyone there on day one. No one ever tried to hit it. There was nothing else over there really to hit except that. And like I said, the pepper grass really wasn't a thing. I talked to people. No one had been catching them out of pepper grass. That was the only little section I'd caught them out of. Or I'd only had one bite, and it was that other one where I lost that big one. Other than that, I had never had a bite in pepper grass the entire time I was there, nor did I get bit in pepper grass anywhere else throughout the event. That was some bad luck. When I look back at it all, I fished pretty clean on day 2. If I had maybe gotten the chance to fish that pepper grass, I might have been able to like cull up a little bit. And the reason I'm not looking for some 20-pound bag, right? But if I'd have caught my fish on day 1 and then had a little bit better, I'd have been sitting in top 3, no problem with a chance to contend. My strategy worked. That's really what it comes down to. Sometimes you look back at an event and go, man, I didn't even have a chance at this event, right? Like it wasn't gonna be good. Like I didn't have a chance to win. I really wasn't around enough fish. I did okay, but this was one of the ones that, like, I was around the right fish. I had a chance. Y'all haven't seen me, man. Like, I'll be honest, I pride myself on execution really well. I haven't lost a fish in any of those events that mattered in a long time. I mean, I fished a couple Toyotas this year, didn't lose any fish. I fished a couple, the ones last year. I think I lost one 5-pounder at Pickwick in the championship of the Toyota. Is the last fish I can remember that mattered, and that was back in like November, and I only lost one fish that entire event in 3 days. Felt like everything was good. I mentioned earlier that I would have liked to fish day 3. Hallman did really good on day 2, and he was right in that same in one little area. Man, I could have put my frogging stuff, the pepper grass stuff, that little area, and throw my swim jig. I could have put it all together on day 3, and I'd have been really interested to see how I'd have panned out, because I don't know, man. You know, Nick caught him pretty good on day 3, and it still wasn't enough to take Lee, you know, because Lee had that giant bag. But I would have loved to have tried, because sometimes when you get on a roll, that place has big ones in it. Anyways, that's my juice videos. I'll talk a little bit about my setup real quick, and then I'll let y'all guys go. Oh, I just have a white. I mean, this is the same ones. Doesn't have an eye left. But this is the same setup I had. I've been throwing this on Rayburn. I got back home and have even fished a tournament, so it still doesn't even have an eye. 3/8 ounce Heck Attack heavy cover swim jig with a, like I said, it's a little dirty, but a white rage bug. 2 reasons for the white rage bug. I was throwing a big rage crawl, a big white one. Guys, I was getting that many bites that even with me not even setting the hook on them, I ran out of them. I thought I'd brought enough. Like I said, I didn't realize I was going to get 30-something bites a day. After a couple days of practice, I mean, we're talking 75 bites I got on this thing. The small one wasn't good, was really dirty, and I'm really wanting this thing up above the water, like high in the water column. That's why this works really well. All that body. If you can tell, that's a very, very thick looking swim jig, right? Like it's got a lot of body to it. It's full, right? That's because of the body of the rage bug. So you want that. I wanted that. I wanted that bright, big, full body, because when I just put the smaller one on there, and that rage crawl is thin, okay? And actually, I would have still gone with that over a big rage crawl, because I wanted that body within the swim jig. It made it real big, where they could see it, and it made it stay on top of the water. So we're gonna tell you have to throw it on 50. I had it on 60-pound sunline, that plasma. I think I practiced with 50. 50 or 60, guys, it doesn't matter. Big reel, I'm a big Super Duty. The other thing I was really doing was throwing my pop and perch, right? Bone colored pop and perch, same deal. I've done enough frog videos. If you want to go check back and look at some of my frog videos, you'll see my whole setup for that. But it was just a bone colored pop and perch. I think I caught every single fish either on one of those two baits. So anyways, hope that helps, guys. Might be a while for another juice video. I don't have a really big tournament coming up for a while, but either way, the videos will continue. I won't stop doing that. Anyways, see y'all guys.